This, I thought about this a great deal. If I am going to play, I'm not going to play, like 48 minutes or 40 minutes. I'm going to try to play 24, 25 minutes. I have two centers right now. I have a great deal of confidence, and I really think Caldwell Jones is going to be a great center. I think he has the potential to be so. I want to have a chance to work with him as much as possible and give him a chance to play as much as possible. If I'm playing, they can play forward and center, and I'm going to try to play about 24, 25 minutes a game unless it's needed to be for more. And of course, it's going to be a strain in playing and coaching, but I think I have a really capable assistant. And really, he's done a great job with him so far. He has him in great shape and has him doing a lot of good things. And so I think that he'll be able to do a lot for me on the bench. I've been known to have many problems with coaches, alleged problems, so to speak. Whatever they were worth, I hope that I have learned some of the pitfalls that coaches go through. I don't claim to be a great coach, even a great understanding of men, but I hope to have a chance to work with these guys, and I think I will allow them to tell me things that they believe in and working together and still like sharing my experiences and what I believe is the right way to win a ball game may work out well.
Wilt Chamberlain holds the most records in NBA history, and his name is synonymous with the NBA record book. But I don't think a lot of people realize that Wilt himself almost went to the ABA. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, the ABA was a professional basketball league that started in the late 60s and they would eventually merge with the NBA. But what was different about this league from other basketball leagues is they took a lot of talent from the NBA. Guys like Rick Barry would jump ship. And also they took a lot of college players, before the NBA could get them. Guys like Julius Irving. And they also drafted guys out of high school to prevent the NBA from getting them. Guys like Moses Malone. But I think what gets forgotten is Wilt Chamberlain's ABA stint. Now, he left the NBA in 1973, and this was his final season. And they made it to the finals and lost to the New York Knicks. And I just think Wilt, from everything I've gathered, everything I've read, was kind of just bored with the NBA. And there were always rumors up into the 80s that Wilt Chamberlain was coming back. For example, the Cleveland Cavaliers offered him a contract. The Philadelphia 76ers at one point in the early 80s offered him a backup role to Moses Malone. He was athletic as hell. He could definitely play. Now, this story I think gets really forgotten. And in September of 1973, he signed with the San Diego Conquistadors of the ABA to a 3-year deal worth 1.8 million. And he would unfortunately the Lakers, whom Chamberlain was still technically under contract for, went to court and sued Wilt Chamberlain. A California court ruled that the Lakers were favored and determined that Chamberlain could not play for the Conquistadors, though he was still eligible to coach them. Wilt, no stranger to logistics involving basketball, he left his Kansas career in college his junior year to enter the NBA draft, but because the league only permitted class graduates to be selected, Chamberlain spent his senior year with the Harlem Globetrotters. And he traveled the world with the Globetrotters, going to Russia. Back then it was the Soviet Union, but you know what I mean. He traveled the world. So this scenario was pretty similar. And the Conquistadors, let's just be honest here. I don't think Wilt was a very good coach. And, there's an interview with Wilt during this time I found where, this must have been before his court case, obviously, where he's saying that he wanted to just play a backup center role, play like, limited minutes. Now, without being able to get on the court, Wilt's motivation to coach them definitely suffered. He allowed Stan Albanak, his assistant coach, to run most of the team's practice, and he frequently skipped practices altogether, from what I've read. Chamberlain didn't make the move to San Diego. Rather, he flew from his Bel Air estate to the Golden Hall minutes before tip-off. And that was kind of the thing about Wilt. When he was in LA, for example, playing with the Lakers, Elgin Baylor didn't really get along with him at first on the team. It was how Wilt would act in practices. Sometimes he would come in late or not even show up at all. Didn't have a lot of motivation. And so let's talk about what could have been with this stint. Now, the Conquistadors themselves, they weren't necessarily a good team. The 73-74 season that he would have played, they went 37-47, and they made it to the ABA Western Divisional Finals, losing to the Utah Stars in 6 games. They had the team's 7th best defense and 6th best offense. Now, there's not a lot of notable guys on this team. They had Caldwell Jones, a great shot blocker. 13 rebounds per game, 4 blocks per game. Bo Lamar was probably their best scorer. They had guys like Stu Johnson. Flynn Robinson was on that team. Let's just be honest. It wasn't a great team. But, a fan submitted this question. How would Wilt have done in the ABA? So, it's really hard to predict numbers. He wanted me to go in the logistics of it all. And here's how I think Wilt would have done. If he's playing backup, I think it would have motivated him to be a better coach. And I think what would have inspired him would have been that, Bill Russell was a great player coach. And I think there's always been in Wilt Chamberlain's mind, I have to do what Russell did to prove I'm better. And, a lot of Wilt apologists might get mad about that, but I'm telling you, he would change his play style to play like Bill Russell to win. There's nothing wrong with that. You adapt your game to win. And who better to adapt your game than the greatest winner of all time? So I think he would have motivated him, but his numbers, let's just be honest, the way the game was played back then, was a lot quicker paced. So he probably, even though he's playing limited minutes, could average quite a few rebounds. Coming off as a backup for Caldwell Jones, who's to say that he couldn't get anywhere from the 8 to 15 rebounds, depending on how many minutes he plays. I don't see him being a scorer for that team because, the team already had 2 20-point per game scorers, kind of like in LA. He's probably just going to focus on defense, shot blocking, outlet passes, and he's going to focus on the coaching. I could see him averaging like 6 to 10 points and anywhere from 8 to 15 rebounds, depending on if he's playing starter minutes. And as far as blocks, this is something that intrigues me. This would be the first time, had he played that season, that his block numbers would actually officially have been recorded. Because they never were recorded when he played in the NBA. So it's quite possible he could average 2 or 3 blocks per game coming off that bench. Now, would they win a championship? Probably not in 74. I mean, the Utah Stars, who defeated them, lost in the finals to the New York Nets, who had Julius Irving. And I don't really see them as a contender going into 75 or 76. The other 2 years in Wilt's contract. I just think some players are not meant to be great coaches. And the problem with a lot of star players is they just expect everybody else to be a star player. They don't really look at it from the role player's perspective. Now, the Conquistadors would actually fold, as every other ABA team except for the Spurs, Pacers, Nets, and I believe the Nets. Now, the ABA, I will give them this. Even though the 70s in the NBA had a lot of parity, the ABA did too. There were quite a few teams that could win 50 or 60 games in the ABA. And who knows? I mean, Wilt Chamberlain could get them to a 50-win season, but I don't think this team is going to win a championship. And, that 73-74 season that he was there, this team doesn't have a good enough future. I mean, if you're going to build a core around Caldwell Jones, no disrespect, great player, you're not going to win anything long term. So that's Wilt Chamberlain's ABA story. What do you think? How many points per game, rebounds per game, whatever, do you think Wilt Chamberlain will average for the San Diego Conquistadors? Let me know your thoughts down below, and thanks for watching.